Another rock shock for the Jayhawks as Kansas falls to 4-3 in the Big 12 for just the second time in the Bill Self era after losing to Iowa State. Is there trouble brewing in Lawrence?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Monday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a 5 times per week daily national college hoop show, part, of course, of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade. Yep. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Folks, new customers right now, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more is a win. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. All right, folks, we got a ton of college basketball coverage to get to today. We're going to talk about the SEC, Auburn's 2-loss week last week. We're going to talk about Tennessee surviving Vanderbilt. We're also going to do a 6-pack, as we always do on those Monday shows, get to you the information about Ed Cooley's return to the Dunc at Providence, a narrow win for the Duke Blue Devils over Clemson, some other fantastic results. But we're going to start with a handful of Big 12 games, including Kansas dropping their third game in conference play in Ames, Iowa, to the Cyclones of Iowa State. As we mentioned at the top there, this is the second time in Bill Self's career as the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks that they are 4-3 in the Big 12. The other season was that 2020-21 campaign. And Isaac, this one wasn't even really that. I mean, it wasn't like a blowout, but Iowa State led for the entire second half.
That's right.
They led by 12, or they got up to as much as 12, and they just kind of hung on. It's what I kind of like to call a professional victory, where you get out to a lead, you just hang on to it. You don't let the other team get too close. You don't let them come all the way back. You don't blow the lead. You just survive, and you continue to survive and advance. And it's the kind of win, frankly, that Kansas is made their reputation on in the Big 12. Like, wins are not easy in the Big 12. And for decades and decades, Kansas has jumped out to leads, held on to them in the second half, and racked up W's. And now they're not winning those games. You know, they're not losing all of them. Obviously, they still have a plus 500 record and an incredibly competitive Big 12 with some new teams and some new faces and a lot of, different challenges. But at the end of the day, it's hard to not look at this Kansas team through 7 games in the Big 12 and have a little concern about where they're at. We spoke about them last week as a team that was not in that kind of conversation, using those KenPom data points of a top 10 offense, top 22 defense. That is kind of the markers historically for NCAA tournament championship teams. But now, I mean, this team doesn't even look like they're necessarily going to win the Big 12. And that is really, really not something that we're having a conversation about very often with Bill Self's team.
Yeah, dude, it's very weird, Andy. A little Hilton magic at work on Saturday. Look, I mean, it's, you mentioned Clemson and Duke earlier. Mm-hmm. Duke was able to come back and get through. Obviously, we'll talk about that. Yeah. But that's what it felt like Kansas typically does, like you just said. But Iowa State said, nah, we're not doing that. TJ Otzelberger's in this building, and we're hanging on to this thing. I mean, Trey King is the leading scorer in this game, 21 points. And, Andy, what was kind of weird for me is as you look back at the box score, all the Kansas typical productivity is there. Hunter Dickinson, 20 points, 15 boards, 4 assists. DeJuan Harris, 9 points, 7 assists. McCullough, 16 points, 7 boards, 3. Like, they're doing things you typically expect. And Andy, on top of that, Johnny Furphy has another good game at the shooting guard position in our Kansas. I feel like at least once a week we're having a Kansas shooting guard watch conversation. But Johnny Furphy, 15 points, 5 of 8 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 6 boards and a steal. Mm-hmm. And yet, Iowa State, man, they just did everything they needed to do. Coach Otzelberger pressing the right buttons. You love to see it. And like, it's a game where Taman Lipsey only has 10 points and Momcilovic only has 9. And so it's just like you're getting enough from a bunch of different dudes.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is Kansas's offensive production was like I said, pretty solid. You got the same amount of production you typically get from your starters. You got that extra production from Furphy. You once again got nothing from the rest of the shooting guard group. Marco Jackson and Nick Timberlake combined to play 15 minutes and score 0 points on only 3 shot attempts. I mean, these guys are just not contributing in any significant way, but that's kind of been par for the course for Bill Self's team. I think some of these issues are happening on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, an Iowa State team that's good. Don't get me wrong. I credit to them. I don't think we want to diminish their accomplishments. This is not, exactly on the same level as like losing to Central Florida. Iowa State is a good ranked team, and
100%.
Yeah, they deserve to be in that conversation, but Kansas has given up 80 to them or 79. Like that's gonna, like, as much as Iowa State is good, you have to be able to play better defense than that. I know it's hard to go on the road, but like that to me is an issue. 75 points for Kansas shouldn't get them wins the majority of the time. And it didn't in this situation. And with Lipsey only scoring 10, like Iowa State had some guys have some really great nights, and that's part of how you pull off upset victories. But it's happening too often to Kansas, and there's some stuff they need to work on the defensive end of the floor, and some consistency that they're starting to find with Furphy from the shooting guard position, but some stuff that still just hasn't quite lined up for this team to really be in the spot that they want to be. I mean, they don't look exactly like a title contender right now. That doesn't mean they can't turn it around, but typically at this time of the year they do, and that's what has kind of made this a bit of a surprise for this team.
100%. And it wasn't just those other 2 shooting guards off the bench, Andy. Let's make sure we note that Kansas as a team had 2 bench points and not much else from the bench. And so, I mean, and it's typical. We don't get a ton from Bill Self's bench. They're 353rd in bench usage. But, Andy, we've got multiple other really interesting Big 12 results from Saturday. Let me just run through them, and you pick where you want to go next. We had the first Big 12 3 overtime game since 2019, with TCU winning at Baylor, number 15, 105-102. Houston obliterated K-State 74-52. They got off to an 11-0 lead, 41-18 halftime lead, and Andy just never looked back. Our other Big 12 game where both teams were ranked, Texas Tech over Oklahoma, 85-84. It wasn't really as close as maybe that looks. Get a little garbage time 3 at the end. And then BYU, there's been moments where I've been like, I don't know, man, that start, it was great, but they're just not going to have it in the Big 12. But they get another win, this one over Texas, 84-72. Andy, where do you want to go out of all that?
I'll start with Houston because that was a really big win for the Cougs over Kansas State. It's going to look like an unranked win, but Kansas State is a good team. They've been playing really well against a lot of the powerhouses in the Big 12, and Houston just never really gave them a chance in this one. I mean, they were up 41-18 at halftime. I mean, that defense for Kelvin Sampson's team is just so unbelievably good. And we were waiting for the offense to show up, and they had 74 points in this game. Like, the offense was absolutely there for Houston in this game. They shot 40% from the field, which isn't great, but they did enough to get up to 74 points. 17 of them came from Jamal Shed. We've kind of talked about how this team needs him to be that guy. They need him consistently, not just on the offensive end. Like, they need him to be that Marcus Sasser type where he's contributing on offense and on defense. And in a game like this, to me, Houston blowing out Kansas State with LJ Cryer scoring just 7 points.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the good and the bad. Like, Houston's ability to do that is tremendous, but LJ Cryer has to be, he has to be more than this. Like, he cannot be this inconsistent. He was 1 of 6 from 3 in this game. Like, if he's not contributing offensively, this Kansas team's ceiling is absolutely capped, but they looked phenomenal in this game. And I think even as a team that's in the top 5, like, I think at times we're still underrating this team. They just need to be more consistent on the offensive end of the floor.
Well, and you contrast it with what we just said about Kansas, where Kelvin Sampson, my man, had 9 different players play at least 12 minutes. 9 players scored 25 points off the bench. Houston's coming at it in a bunch of different ways. And through the grind of the Big 12 gauntlet, man, I think that's critically important. Andy, the other one I want to go to is that other ranked on ranked game with Texas Tech, where I think a lot of us thought, like Texas Tech, they've had a pretty decent start here. Well, we'll see, if there's something to it. There has been, Andy, like, Texas Tech's doing it. And, there's all the Pop Isaac stuff and whatever. We got to deal with that. But, I mean, this team, they're 5-1. They're leading the Big 12, Andy, 6 games into the Big 12 season. And there's got to be something to be said for that for Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech having a 2-game lead over Kansas was not on my bingo card at any stretch in the Big 12 play, and yet here they are. I think you're absolutely right to bring that up. The last thing I'll shout out real quickly, Jameer Nelson Jr., a guy I thought I had big aspirations for him coming into the Big 12 from Delaware to TCU. Hasn't had a super great season, but he dropped a 30-burger off the bench for TCU. Yes, it was in triple overtime, but I don't care. 30 points for him. That is a fantastic, much needed performance for Jamie Dixon's team. Hopefully that'll get him going for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and it's weird that Baylor too is down to 3-3 in Big 12 play. And I mean, because it's like Kansas is tied for 4th right now. You know, we said Texas Tech, and then it's Iowa State and Houston right behind at 5-2. Andy, it's starting to like end of the day right now, it's kind of looking to me like maybe Houston is the team that wins this thing if we get an outright, but I wouldn't be shocked if Iowa State could hold. The Big 12 is up for grabs. I guess we end up putting it that way.
Yep.
Andy, let's move from the Big 12 to the SEC, where Auburn needed a bounce back on Saturday after their midweek loss to Alabama. They didn't get it. Little spoiler alert there against Mississippi State. And suddenly the Tigers might not look so hot, and still 0 quad 1 victories. We'll get to all of that and more in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Andy, we've moved from basically a Big 12 conversation to switching attention to the SEC, which is just like the Big 12, having a great year this year. The SEC right now at KenPom rates as the 3rd best conference, just right behind the Big East. And where we want to start is with this Auburn team that's been a little perplexing this season, not with their play, but with how much the computer numbers love them. Despite them not really having this dynamic resume. It's a good resume. You know, they just had that Baylor loss, the App State loss, but now, Andy, back-to-back SEC losses, the Bama loss midweek, and then Mississippi State on Saturday. Consequently, not only does Auburn now have back-to-back SEC losses after an undefeated start to conference play, they still don't have a quad 1 win, Mr. Patton.
Yeah, rough stuff from Auburn in this one. You really wanted to see a bounce back from Bruce Pearl's team. How do they respond to getting that first loss in a long time, a loss to a rivalry team in Alabama? And they just didn't have it against Mississippi State. And Mississippi State's, has not met the expectations many people had for them preseason. They're still a good team. Like, this isn't a horrible loss in a vacuum for Auburn, but coming off of a win or a loss that kind of made their resume look a little bit more precarious. Like, this was a big opportunity for them to do what they've been doing throughout the year, which is blowing teams out. Go out and blow out Mississippi State, just absolutely hand it to them. And then that conversation that we're having, that many other, the AP voters right now are having about what do we do with this team? You don't have to have that conversation as much. But now, I mean, this team, they had 6 offensive rebounds in this game. They got out-rebounded by 15 by the Bulldogs, 45-36. Offensive rebounds. Cameron Matthews for Mississippi State also had 6 offensive rebounds. Like, that's a huge problem for Auburn, as they're unable to crash the glass. Jedi Broom had a good game. He had 7 rebounds, 14 points. He was fine. Jalen Williams struggled, 3 of 11 from the field. Like, they didn't have the offense. I mean, they only scored 58 points. Again, Mississippi State's a good team, but this is what Auburn needed to prove, is that they can win this kind of game, that they can respond from that loss to Alabama. They didn't do it. Now their resume starts to look a lot sketchier without those quad one wins. They still got plenty of opportunities to pick them up, but they did not play like a team that deserves to be in that top 5, top 10 conversation like they were just last week.
Yeah, and they've got a get-right game midweek against Vandy, and then, I think it's one game and then playing Alabama again back at Auburn. So that'd be a big opportunity because Alabama, by the way, is in first place all by themselves right now in the SEC. But speaking of Vandy, Andy, Vanderbilt had a halftime lead on Tennessee on Saturday, 35-30. And I don't need to probably tell you that Vandy doesn't exactly have a ton of conference wins right now. In fact, they and Mizzou are a combined 13 in the SEC, Andy. That's pretty bonkers. But how about this one? Vandy was still up actually by 5, 40-35 with 16:15 left. From there, Tennessee outscores the Commodores 40-22 the rest of the way for that final 75-62 victory. But Andy, the story for Tennessee, as it has been so often this season, is the man Dalton Connect. Another 30-point game for homie, 32 in this one, 6 boards, 3 assists, 3 blocks, and if I remember correctly, just 1 turnover for Dalton Connect, who just continues to deliver performance after performance after performance. And so, Andy, my question to you about this game in particular is, I feel like we've so often said, man, Connect is the missing piece for this Tennessee team that had struggled offensively so much last year. Is that enough, with the healthy Zakai Ziegler back, or are there games where he's going to fall off? And Andy, it looks like he's going to be able to deliver game after game after game.
Yeah, I think you hope so, but obviously, you are pretty reliant on him right now in a way that I don't think Tennessee necessarily expected to be. I mean, looking at the box score in this one, Ziegler and Vescovi combined for 22 points. Connect had 32. You can't have him being that much more of a scorer than anybody else on your roster. I mean, Jordan Gainey had 10 off the bench. That's fantastic. They could always use him being able to step in and contribute in that way, but they got 0 points from Jordan James, 0 from him. They got 9 points from Adu. It's fine. That's quality, but I think this roster was constructed in a way to be really good defensively, and they just needed a go-to scorer. And shout out to Rick Barnes for finding his guy. I mean, that is why this team is a top 5, top 10 caliber program, and why they are, in my mind, still the favorites to win the SEC, even though they are behind Alabama right now. But if some team finds out a way to stop Dalton Connect, what happens? And I think that is the big question for Tennessee right now, because he may very well be Superman. It sure looks like it is right now. But if there's one team that slows him down, or he just has an off night, what does this team do? And I think they have talented offensive players on this roster, but they haven't really shined in a major way yet this year. And I'm curious what will happen, because we have seen Tennessee struggle. We have seen them struggle and nearly lose games in conference play. And I think there is an avenue to beating this team if you can find a way to stop him. But so far, people have tried and people have failed, because he has been absolutely lights out in conference play.
Well, I'll tell you this, Andy, we're going to find out on Saturday, because while most people's attention will be on Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Tennessee's going to Rupp Arena. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. And I haven't looked at the schedule yet. I'm hoping those games are scheduled at different times. Please tell me somebody had the wherewithal to make that happen. Speaking of, Andy, Kentucky and Arkansas in Bud Walton Arena on Saturday in Fayetteville. By the way, let's start here. No Devo Davis for Arkansas, who, according to the program, is stepping away. Don't have a ton of information on that yet.
It was announced right before the game, which is very odd.
Yeah, really weird. No Rob Dillingham for Kentucky in this one. It was good. Arkansas got Tremont Mark back, who had missed the game midweek. But Andy, if my numbers are correct, Kentucky went 1 of 20 to start this game. The two teams combined to score 50 points in the first half. Arkansas led at halftime 26-24. This is not what we expect from a dynamic offensive team like Kentucky and a team with 59 guards like Arkansas. How on earth does this happen? Kentucky ultimately wins 63-57.
Yeah, it was a really baffling game. Zvonimir Ivisic had no impact after having that fantastic debut and then not doing as much in his second game. Now he comes into a game against an Arkansas team that doesn't have a lot of size. Like you said, Mark was back, but that's, he didn't have a huge impact in this game. And that's kind of Arkansas. One of their big issues this year has been the lack of depth and just, bigs in the front court. And for Ivisic to have just 2 rebounds, only played 2 minutes, it was kind of a strange game just all around for Kentucky in particular. Justin Edwards has basically fallen out of the rotation. He only played 9 minutes, I think, in this game.
Yep,
and
that's right.
Aaron Bradshaw didn't make much of a difference. Like this
points,
team is so dependent on they're so freshman built, and obviously Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham, who didn't play in this one, but those guys have been fantastic. Wagner has had a little bit of inconsistency, but lately he's been really good. But I mean, this team, they only win this game because of Antonio Reeves, and I think Trey Mitchell was their second leading scorer. Like they need the
Mitchell had a double, I think 10 and 11. Yeah,
he had 10 and 11. They need the veteran guys in a major way, and shout out to them for stepping up and getting them a W here. But I wonder about this team. I mean, this is just one kind of sloppy game, but it's on the heels of the loss to South Carolina, where they also look kind of sloppy. And I think this team's talent is tremendous, but you start to wonder if the freshmen are hitting a wall or what's going on, because there was very little impact from those guys in this game. And they were playing a team that has not been good this entire year in Arkansas.
Andy, let me give you Reed Shepherd's stat line. You ready for this?
Yes.
14
always love his stat lines.
They're so fun, man. 14 points on 5 of 12 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, a block.
Yep, that's about right.
I mean, dude, come on. I should also mention, I didn't say when I was talking about all those guys that were missing, no Trevon Brazile in this game either. Andy, quickly, elsewhere in the SEC, Florida gets a 4-point win over Georgia in overtime, 102-98. Shouldn't have had to do that. They were handling things very well until they weren't. UGA scores 51 in the second half. Crazy stuff there. Speaking of a team, though, like at least Florida held on.
Yeah.
Texas A&M was beating Ole Miss at home by like, what was it, like 7 points with like 3.5 left. Allowed Chris Beard's team to come back and win. You got to take care of business at home, particularly in conference play, and they couldn't. This probably is going to have some major bubble ramifications, Andy, as we start getting into that, which, by the way, February 1st, folks, we kick off Bubble Watch. It's lots of fun, something we'll do here on the show. We'll maybe even get some bubbles going, so make sure you're ready for that. SEC standings, Alabama is in sole possession of first place, 6-1, half game ahead of Tennessee, and then a whole jumble of everyone else right behind them, started by South Carolina, Auburn, and Kentucky, all at 5-2.
Well, Ed Cooley returned to Providence, and it was all of the theatrics that we hoped that it would be. We're going to discuss that game. Also, a narrow win by Duke that we touched on earlier. All that coming up after a word from today's sponsor, FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to everybody who celebrates from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Look, if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Right now, the lines, as we're recording this on Sunday evening, 49ers 2.5-point favorites over the Chiefs. That's probably going to change quite a bit, but if you're in favor of that, definitely the time to head to FanDuel right now. They have so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more is a win. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, Isaac, it is Monday, and it is our Six Packs. Tons of great action that we did not get to so far in the show. And we're going to start in Providence, where Ed Cooley and Georgetown returned to the Dunc for the first time. This is a game that many people had circled on their calendar as soon as Ed Cooley became the first coach in Big East history to leave for another Big East job. He goes to Georgetown. He returns. That place was an absolute party the entire game. It was animated. There was a lot of energy and enthusiasm. Never really crossed a line. I guess shout out to Providence for being able to kind of thinly walk that line. Devin Carter ensured that he will never, ever, ever have to pay for a drink in Providence ever again because he had 29 on 10 of 14 shooting, and the Friars pull out an 84-76 victory over Georgetown. They move to 5-4 in Big East play. A couple other quick results in the Big East, since we didn't get to talk about that conference much today. UConn obliterated Xavier on Sunday, 99-56, the final score there. Marquette secured a victory over Seton Hall. It was close in the first half, but Marquette ran away with it in the second half. And then Villanova lost a double overtime game to Butler, 88-81, the final there. Villanova now 4-5 in the Big East. Really rough stuff from Kyle Neptune's squad.
Andy, switching to the ACC, Duke narrowly escapes losing at Cameron on back-to-back Saturdays, beating Clemson 72-71, keeping pace with North Carolina. I say keeping pace. There's 2 games back of the Tar Heels, but the only team with 2 losses in the ACC. It's just a big old gap after those 2 teams. Tyrese Proctor wins it for Duke at the free throw line, nailing 2 free throws with 1 second on the clock. Andy, 18-5 for him, 21 for Jared McCain to lead the way. PJ Hall, another great game for Clemson, 19 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 7 of 7 from the free throw line, including giving Clemson a lead that it looked like they might be able to hold on to, but they just couldn't. Poor Ian Shefflin, Andy. I hate it for this guy. Clemson has a 4-point lead with about 100 seconds left, and he turns it over 3 different times in the final 97 seconds, whereas Clemson had an opportunity to kind of make some movement in the ACC standings. They just can't get it. They fall to 3-5, while Duke moves to 6-2. Andy, our second big Monday coming up tonight. Duke is at Virginia Tech, so folks, be ready for that great showdown in Blacksburg.
Yeah, we didn't mention it earlier as well, but Houston and Texas is the other big Monday game. That should be an absolutely...
That's in Austin, right?
In Austin, yes. That should be an absolutely fantastic game. Very excited for Big Monday coming back. But moving forward on the 6-pack, didn't realize we did this, but we have different conferences for every single one of our 6-packs. That's pretty fun. We're going over the Pac-12.
What are you talking about? We totally did that on purpose.
Yeah, we kind of did. I'll give us some credit. Next up, Arizona beats Oregon, and this comes after losing to Oregon State, a game we missed on Friday's episode just because of timing for that recording, but a obviously disastrous loss for Tommy Lloyd's team to lose to Oregon State. Jordan Pope, game-winning 3-pointer for the Beavers. But then Arizona turns around and beats Oregon. That's again, we're talking about Auburn needing that kind of to win that game after losing to Alabama to kind of reestablish themselves. Arizona managed to do that in this situation. Oregon's a better team to go to Matt Knight Arena and win. Huge kind of get-right game for the Wildcats. Caleb Love, really phenomenal game for him. And we joke about Caleb Love a handful of times on this show, just about his inefficiency. And we talked in the preseason about how we thought him leaving North Carolina might be a benefit for them, which frankly it has been in the way that RJ Davis has played. But when Caleb Love is on, folks, Caleb Love is really on. 36 in this one. He was 12 of 18 from the field, 36 points on 6 missed field goals. That is phenomenal stuff. He was 5 of 8 from 3, 7 of 8 from the line. He tacked on 3 boards, 2 assists, and a steal as well. These teams, Arizona and Oregon, now tied atop the Pac-12, 6-3. Again, the Pac-12 has a rich history of cannibalization where they always seem to beat each other up and impact their ability to get higher seeds in March. That kind of looks like the case here again for this conference. Also want to give a shout out to UCLA pulling out a victory over USC, 65-50. It was as gross as that score indicates. It's been a rough year for both those LA schools. The Trojans, who had, again, top 20 aspirations. I mean, they were in the top 20 to start the year. They're 2-7 in the Pac-12. Tremendously rough year for Andy Enfield's squad in LA. Andy,
Colorado State kind of falling off a little bit, my man. They lose to Wyoming 79-76. The Rams are now 3-4 in Mountain West action. Wyoming up to 4-3. Colorado State shot just 34.5% from 3, and they shot that, but out rebounded the Cowboys. And Wyoming shot just 22.7% from 3. But still, Wyoming's able to get this victory. And meanwhile, elsewhere in the Mountain West, by the way, Utah State 90-84 overtime victory at Boise State, so they now have sole possession of first place.
Pair of games we want to talk about in the American Athletic Conference. FAU, the Owls, get a very narrow win over North Texas, 66-63. They move to 7-1 in the AAC. They're 17-4 overall. Meanwhile, the Mean Green dropped to 5-2. Shout out John L. Davis, 28 points and 8 boards for the Owls. Also, UAB, the Blazers, upset Memphis. Memphis has had a really rough go the last couple of weeks. They are dropping to 4-3 in the AAC. They're 15-5 overall, but only 4-3 in conference play. David Jones had a very unique game for the Tigers, 24 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 steals, but he also had 9 turnovers. Ooh. These two teams combined to turn it over 43 times in this mess of a game. Yaxel Lendeboard for UAB had 23 points and 16 boards as they moved to 5-2 in the AAC.
How about some A10 action, Andy? We talked about this on Friday. We had 2 undefeated teams going at it, and I think we both thought Dayton would be able to run away with this one a little bit, but no. Richmond comes out victorious 69-64. The Flyers hadn't lost since November 19th, Andy, against Houston. Daron Holmes, not a good day for him, unfortunately, and Dayton really needs him to have really good days. Just 9 points on 2 of 12 shooting, including 2 of 9 from 3. Spiders now 7-0 in A10 play, 15-5 overall, had all 5 starters in double figures, including a 12-point, 15-rebound double-double from Isaiah Bigelow. However, Andy, just 1 made field goal, but he was 9 of 10 from the free throw line. That's how we got to those 12 points. Y'all, it has been a great Monday. Just another loaded weekend of college basketball. It's so exciting. It's almost February, man. It is the ramp up to this thing, and we're going to have a great time. Make sure you're locked in and tuned in every single day. If you want to do that in a deeper way, come join the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. The link for that is in the show notes. It's free to be a part of. I want to thank you so much for being here. Subscribe to the show on video and audio. Smash the like button if you're watching. And please, if you would, rate and review the show 5 stars. Talk about why you love it. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go, all you wonderful Wildcats out there. And until tomorrow, peace.